the world, and God. The blissful, silent, real principle, self, or Brahman, alone is the true arena or base for Maya, who is the great power of consciousness, Mahachit Shakti, which is not other than the real perfect principle, to play her deceptive game forever, having the three principles, the world, soul, and God, as her playthings. What a wonder it is. Guru Vachaka Kovai, verse 12-15. The blissful, silent, real principle, self or Brahman, alone is the true arena or base for Maya, who is the great power of consciousness, Mahachit Shakti, which is not other than the real perfect principle, to play her deceptive game forever, having the three principles, the world, soul, and God, as her playthings. What a wonder it is. Guru Vachaka Kovai, verse 12-15. The world, soul, and God are the three playthings handled by Maya in her wonderful game of delusion. Without these three playthings, which are called the three principles, or Tripardata, the divine game or lila cannot continue. Every religion which has come into existence on earth is based upon these three principles. Every religion first postulated three principles, the world, God, and soul. Uladu Narpadu, verse 2. Some people object. In some religions, such as Buddhism, no mention is made about God. But that is not the case. Just as other religions say, there is a third entity called God who is worthy to be glorified, loved, and attained by man. Do not religions like Buddhism also point out a goal to mankind by saying, there is a blissful state called parinirvana, which man should attain by renouncing the world, which is full of misery? Since that goal, called parinirvana, is what is referred to in other religions by the name of God, we should understand that every religion, including Buddhism, is based upon the three entities, the world, soul, and God, and thus comes within the orbit of the gracious divine game which is for a good purpose played by Maya. So long as a man experiences himself and the world as two separate entities, each having a distinct individual existence, he cannot in practice conceive even the mind-transcending state of parinirvana to be anything but a third, which is distinct from himself and the world. Among these three entities, which is called the soul or jiva, is we, the first person. This world which we perceive in front of us through the five senses is a second-person object, while God and these objects of the world which we do not now directly perceive through the senses are third-person objects. Concerning which one of these three entities, the soul, world, and God, to which one of these three entities do problems arise? The world, which now appears in front of us as something insentient, is an object known by us. No problems arise for it concerning either the soul or God, and hence it does not have to grieve over its inability to solve those problems. If we then consider God, where is He? What is His nature? Does He have any problems concerning the world and soul? If any such problems exist for Him, are they the first and most important thing for us to attend to? We will have to conclude that for Him also there cannot be any problems. Thus it is clear that no problems of any kind exist either for the world or for God. Therefore it is only for us, the soul, the knowing subject, that countless problems arise concerning the world and God. Why? We see the world, yet though we make as much research about it as we are able to, The facts about it are found to be so unlimited that they cannot all be grasped within the narrow range of our intellects. Similar is the case with God. Our religions have given us endless descriptions about God. However, since the ordinary human intellect is unable to perceive the truth behind any of these descriptions, innumerable questions and doubts about God are always arising in us. Thus, problems about the world and God arise in great abundance only to us, the soul. Therefore, it would be appropriate for us first of all to take only to the inquiry, who am I, the soul, in order to avoid creating more confusions by saying anything about the world and God, which are second and third persons. In the first part of this book, only the first person I was taken as the subject of our research. Lord Buddha declined to say anything about God in reply to those who asked him about him. But knowing that it would serve no useful purpose to say anything, not only about God but even about the world and its nature, in reply to people who ask about them, Sri Bhagavan used to repeatedly insist, "Let us see about God and the world afterwards. First know yourself. The world is real? No, it is an unreal appearance. The world is sentient? It is not. The world is happiness? It is not. What is the use of arguing thus in vain? Having given up attending to the world, having known oneself, and both one and two thoughts about non-duality and duality, having come to an end, that state in which I, the ego, has ceased to exist is agreeable to all." Uladu Narpadu, verse 3. Thus, Sri Bhagavan teaches that the first and foremost need for us is to know ourself, the first person. From the Stone Age to the modern space age, man who is filled with so many questions and doubts has been using his intellect to make research only upon second and third person objects. Man's questions and doubts are only about the world and God. Why? Because no man ever raises any questions or doubts about himself, that is, about his knowledge, chit, of his own existence, sat. Do I exist or not? Since all doubts rise only about the knowledge which man has of the existence of the world and God, all this time he has been eagerly making research only about these other two entities and not about himself. What benefits has mankind derived from the progress in knowledge which it has made by dividing itself into two large sections and by making research in the above said two broad directions? The human intellect, which started to make research on the world, has now discovered a wonderful material science which can split even atoms, the fundamental particles of which this world is said to be composed of. The discoveries made by scientific research are innumerable, but when we consider the unlimited number of objects in the world, such as the planets and stars in space, which still remain unknown to us, it is clear that there can be no end to scientific research, and that the human intellect can never see the other shore of the vast ocean of scientific knowledge. By discovering innumerable powers hidden in the nature, such as the power of magnetism, fire, water, steam, wind, petrol, electricity, and atomic energy, and by inventing all kinds of contrivances, machines and weapons to make use of these powers, scientific research has resulted in terrible great wars, which have made the whole world tremble, and which have caused destruction and bloodshed on the hitherto unprecedented scale. And what about the research made in the other one of the above said two directions? The human intellect which started to make research on God, has produced many religions. Each one of these religions has framed and espoused many different beliefs and dogmas of its own. They have divided the people amongst themselves into many different sects, and they have tried to propagate and make all people follow their own dogmas. Since ignorant people are unable to comprehend the common truth which underlies all religions, they become victims to religious fanaticism, and due to their attachment to their own religion, they condemn all other religions. They try to convert people of other religions to their own religion. They even stoop to the level of becoming entangled in religious wars, and thus they also result in human bloodshed. The history of the world itself bears testimony to this fact. Should we not try, at least now, to put an end to all the evils and miseries which have befallen mankind as a result of our rising and using our intellects to make research upon the world and God, which are second and third person objects? Do we not know about the existence of three persons, the first person, second person, and third person? But have we made research on all these three persons, and have we tried to find out what the nature of each one of them is? No, we have so far made research only upon the second and third persons, and we have failed up to now to scrutinize or make research upon the first person. How? See the way in which we make use of our power of attention when we wake up from sleep. As soon as we wake up, the first thing we know is our body, and then we notice the place where we are lying, the objects which surround us, the outside world, and so on. Knowing all these things is only a second-person attention. Thus, when we wake up, our power of attention springs out only towards second and third-person objects. Then, until we fall asleep again, our power of attention continues to dwell only upon the second and third persons, by clinging to and experiencing the objects known through the five senses. At night, as soon as sleep overpowers us, our attention towards second and third persons ceases. What exactly happens to the power of attention in sleep is not correctly known to anyone except those who have attained self-knowledge. In this manner, from the moment of waking up till the moment of going to sleep, from birth till death, from creation till dissolution, all people, indeed all living beings, direct their power of attention only towards second and third person objects, and no one ever directs it towards the first person. This great error is what is called the original sin. There are some people who ask, how can it be said that no one ever directs their attention towards the first person? But in the East and in the West, so many people have on so many occasions pondered over the nature of the mind, and as a result, they have written innumerable books on psychology. Is this not research upon the first person? If any researcher, whoever he may be, had directed his power of attention towards the correct first person, he would certainly have attained self-knowledge. All the ancient sages of India realized the truth in the end only by knowing the real nature of this first person. Even in the West, there have occasionally been people here and there who have attained self-knowledge in the same way. Therefore, if any of the people who have written heaps of books on psychology have not after all their research come to the same conclusion as that which is proclaimed by Vedanta, namely, that I alone is the absolute truth, and if they have not thereby attained the true experience of self, we will have to conclude that their research was not a scrutiny of the correct first person, All that they have done was to attend to a second-person object called mind. As we saw earlier in this book, the word mind is generally taken to be a collective name for the whole multitude of thoughts, although in actual fact the only fundamental and essential characteristic of the mind is the root thought I, the first-person singular feeling. Thus, the word mind may be said to have two meanings. Its primary meaning is the subjective aspect of the mind, namely the first-person thought I, while its secondary meaning is the objective aspect of the mind, namely the multitude of other thoughts, all of which exist only by depending upon this first thought, I. This multitude of thoughts is only a crowd of second-person objects. All that psychologists have made research upon is this objective aspect of the mind, and they have never made research upon its subjective aspect, the first-person thought I. Since all the thoughts which form the objective aspect, the mind, are only second persons, any research made upon them cannot be a scrutiny of the first person. It is only a research made upon an object, drishya, which is known by us as other than I, the knowing subject drik. Books on psychology, parapsychology, and other such sciences which relate to the nature of the mind are merely the outcome of the research which has been made upon the mysteries of this second-person mind, because such sciences are concerned only with investigating and knowing the mind as an object. That is, they merely seek to know what are the various ways in which the mind can function, which are all the secret powers which lie hidden within the mind, which are the means by which such wonderful powers may be roused and developed so that they can be used as supernatural attainments, siddhis, in order to achieve one's own selfish ends, and so on and so forth. Thus, even sciences like psychology turn out to be only a research made upon a second-person object, just as other scientists make research upon gross second- and third-person objects such as atoms. Psychologists make research upon a subtle second-person object called mind. And just as the results which have been achieved through other branches of scientific research are only a mixture of good and evil, so the results which have been achieved through psychological research are also only a mixture of good and evil. Therefore, since psychological research has not resulted in the blissful peace of self-knowledge, which transcends all such dualities as good and evil, it is clear that such research is not an attention to the correct first-person object. Turning one's attention towards oneself in order to find out who am I, who knows the mind, alone is the correct first-person attention. Anyone who attends to himself in this manner, whoever he may be, will certainly attain the true knowledge of self. This is a rule to which there can be no exception. Bhagavan Sri Ramana was born on earth in modern times in order to reveal that the practice of self-attention, which is the correct research upon the first person, is the only path which will unfailingly bestow peace, tranquility, and happiness upon man, who has up till now been wasting the immense and precious power of his mind in making research upon second- and third-person objects, which has resulted in so much war, bloodshed, and destruction. Like an expert mechanic who can locate and rectify the exact cause of malfunctioning in a machine, Sri Bhagavan was immediately able to detect where and how the research made by the human mind had gone wrong, and to discover the means by which it could be set right, since he clearly knows each and every aspect of the extremely subtle nature of the mind's functioning. He is the all-knowing Lokamaha Guru, or universal teacher, who can save mankind by showing the one goal which is worthy to be aimed at. Thus, the principal teaching which he has given to the whole world is only the practice of self-attention, which is the easy and direct path, and which is so rational that it can be accepted and followed by all people. Bhagavan Sri Ramana does not decry or condemn the good which mankind has derived either from science or from religion, but at the same time, he himself does not belong to any particular religion or school of thought, nor did he ever have any liking to found or propagate a religion in his own name. Religions, matas, exist only within the limitations of the mind, mati, whereas the goal shown by Sri Bhagavan is only self, the reality which transcends and shines beyond the limitation of the mind. Religion mata will exist only so long as the mind mati exists, in the abundantly peaceful great silence in which that mind has merged in the heart by turning within, scrutinizing itself, inquiring, "Who am I, this mind?" No such religion can stand. Guru Vachaka Kovai, verse 993. Therefore, the path of Sri Ramana is not a religion. Even to call it a religion of non-duality, Advaita Mata, is wrong, because duality and non-duality are considered to be two religions. They are merely a dyad or pair of opposites, each of which has an existence only because of the other. That is, the word non-duality has a meaning only in relation to the word duality, and thus both of them are of the same degree of reality. The revelation of Darshanam of Sri Ramana is only the absolute truth, Paramartika Satya, in which the path and the goal are found to be one and the same. Since the eternal self is non-dual, and since there is no other path to attain it, except to attend to and thereby to abide as self, the goal to be attained is only self, and the path is only self. Know them, the goal and the path, to be non-different. Guru Vachaka Kovai, verse 579. Sri Bhagavan has shown us that it is only because man has not yet attained a correct knowledge of the first person that it has been impossible for him to have a correct knowledge about the truth of the second and third person objects, the world, and God, and that it is only because man has not yet attained a true knowledge about the second and third person objects, that is only because man continues to have wrong knowledge that the second and third persons are different from the truth of the first person, that so much unnecessary confusion and strife prevails among the people of the world, and that as a consequence, so many misfortunes and calamities have befallen mankind. Being the perfect spiritual doctor that he is, Sri Bhagavan has thus clearly and precisely diagnosed the exact nature of the dangerous disease which exists in the mind of mankind. Moreover, he has also prescribed an entirely new method of treatment, namely taking the medicine of self-attention and observing the diet restriction of completely abstaining from attending to second and third person objects, and thereby he has provided us with the perfect remedy which will surely remove the primal disease of mankind, the disease known as original sin. If we scrutinize this method of treatment more deeply, we will understand that the medicine is devotion, bhakti, and the diet restriction is desirelessness, vairagya. Sri Bhagavan has also clearly explained that the correct way of taking the medicine of self-inquiry is to attend to oneself in order to find out who am I. And he has given us many clues to facilitate this practice. All of these things he has taught us from his own experience of self-knowledge, which dawned in him all of a sudden without his having studied any books and without his having had any other person as a guru to teach him. Hence, the sole purpose of this exposition of Sri Bhagavan's teachings is to enable mankind to know the correct target towards which it should aim the arrow of its attention, and to enable it thereby to direct its research towards that proper goal. At this point, some people may ask, is it then completely unnecessary for us to know anything at all about the world and God? Is it useless for us even to try to know about them? No, it is not useless. If an aspirant correctly discriminates and understands about the world and God, it will be very beneficial to him. But if one does not make research about them with maturity of mind and with proper discrimination, the outcome of one's research will be very dangerous. It was only in order to safeguard us against the adverse result, which most people usually derive from such research, that Sri Bhagavan often used to declare that we should give up the research upon the world and God, and should first try to know ourselves. If, however, we make research about the world and God with proper discrimination, the knowledge which we will obtain from such research will make us clearly understand the necessity of knowing self, and it will also give us great enthusiasm and strength to attend to and to abide firmly in self. In addition to that, it will also be of help to us by showing us that we need not altogether spurn either the efforts put forth by mankind up till now to make the research about the world and God or the results obtained from such efforts, and by enabling us to understand how we can instead make the best use of those results for the benefit of mankind. Therefore, with only this intention in view, let us now make a little more scrutiny about the world and God. On different occasions, by different people, Sri Bhagavan was asked a great variety of questions about the nature of the world, and about how it came into existence, and about the nature of God who created it. Let us now see the essence of the teachings which he gave in reply to such questions. The Sanskrit word for world is loka, which etymologically means that which is seen. In ancient times, sages gave this name to the world because they knew the truth that the world is not that which truly exists, only that which is seen. The same idea is also implied by Sri Bhagavan in the opening words of the first verse of Uladu Narpadu. Because we see the world, accepting the existence of one principle which has a manifold power is indispensable. In Tamil, the first word of this sentence is we, which denotes the soul or jiva, the first of the three entities, the soul, world, and God. From the words, because we see the world, we should understand that the world, the second of the three entities, is merely appearance, which is seen. In the words, one principle which has manifold power, the word one principle denotes Brahman, the absolute reality which is the source and base from which the three entities rise and into which they subside, and which itself shines, transcending those three entities. It is only after the first person feeling, I am a man, has risen from sleep, that the world which is seen in front of us appears. The mind or man who sees this world then feels impelled to infer and accept the existence of an almighty God who is able to create this world, which is seen to be so vast and multivarious, That is, in the waking state, after the rising of the first-person feeling, I am so-and-so, which did not exist in sleep, everyone has to accept the existence of the other two entities, the world and God, which are second and third persons. The world and God are non-existent only when this first-person feeling I am a man is non-existent, that is, in sleep and in the truly awakened state of self-knowledge. At such times, no necessity arises to accept the world and God. This is a fact which we can clearly understand from the following teachings of Sri Bhagavan. After an I rises, everything rises. Uladu Narpadu, verse 23. If the ego comes into existence, everything will come into existence. If the ego does not exist, everything will not exist. The ego itself is everything. Uladu Narpadu, verse 26. If the thought I does not exist, no other things will exist. Sri Arunachala Ashtakam, verse 7. How does this world come into existence? How does it continue to exist? And how does it disappear? Since the human mind likes to infer the existence of a cause for every effect, a source for every appearance, and a doer for every action, when it sees such a vast and wonderful universe, it cannot remain without liking to infer the existence of a God who performs the actions of creation, sustenance, and destruction, and without wanting to know about him. The Vedas therefore have to accept this attitude which exists in the minds of most people, and to guide them accordingly. Hence the Vedas have given extremely elaborate descriptions about the process of gradual creation. Kramasrishti, that is, about how this world and all the living beings in it have gradually come into existence from God. On one occasion when some devotees asked Sri Bhagavan, why is it that in different portions of the Vedas, the process of creation is described in so many different ways, each one of which contradicts the others? He replied, if creation were real, the Vedas would have described the process of creation in only one way. Since they have, however, described the process in so many different and contradictory ways, is it not clear that creation is unreal? The true aim of the Vedas is not to give a correct description about the process of creation. Their true, ultimate, and inner aim is only to make us understand that the ever non-existent world is unreal, and that the ever-existing self or Brahman is the sole reality. This same idea is also expressed by Sri Bhagavan in verse 102 of Guru Vachaka Kovai. The intention of the Shastras in describing the mode or creation in many different and contradictory ways is only this. The inner intention of the Shastras is not to establish the mode of creation, to induce spiritual aspirants to make research upon the reality, which is the source or root of this world appearance, is alone the intention of those texts. In the question and answer version of Vichara Sangraham, it is recorded that in answer to the 10th question, if the entire universe is only the form, swarupa of the mind, does it not follow that the universe is unreal? If such is the case, why is the creation of the universe mentioned in the Vedas? Sri Bhagavan explained as follows. There is no doubt whatsoever that the universe is entirely unreal. The principal purpose of the Vedas is only to make known the real Brahman. Having shown the unreal world to be unreal, it is only for this and for no other reason that the Vedas admit the creation of the world. Moreover, for people of dull understanding, Manda Adhikaris, they say that by a process of gradual creation, Kramasrishti, the primal cause, Prakriti, the cosmic intellect, Mahatattva, the subtle elements, Tanmatras, the gross elements, Bhutas, the world, the body, and so on, gradually come into existence from Brahman, while for people of keen understanding, Tiva Adhikaris, they say that by the process of simultaneous creation, Yugapat Srishti, this world came into existence like a dream on account of one's own thoughts, which rise due to the defect of one's not knowing oneself, who is self, Atman. Thus, from the fact that they describe the creation of the world in many different ways, it is evident that the purpose of the Vedas is only to make Brahman known, having established somehow or other that the universe is unreal, in the state of realization whose form is the experience of the bliss of self. Everyone can directly know the fact that the world is unreal. Sri Bhagavan used to explain on many occasions that the Vedas and other scriptures teach so many different theories of creation in order to suit the different levels of maturity and understanding of the people, and that all these countless theories of creation can be classified into three distinct categories, namely 1. Srishti Drishti Vada, or the theory that the creation of Srishti, of this world, occurs prior to and independent of our seeing, Drishti, of it. 2. Drishti Srishti Vada, or the theory that our seeing Drishti is the cause of the creation, Srishti, of this world. And 3. Ajata Vada, or the theory that neither creation, Srishti, nor seeing, Drishti, has ever happened at all. Knowing that the minds of immature people cannot be satisfied unless they are taught a process of creation as the cause of the appearance of this world, the Vedas at first have to teach various different theories of gradual creation, Krama Srishti. All the various processes of gradual creation described in the Vedas and in the scriptures of other religions belong only to the category of Srishti Drishti Vada. Indeed, almost all the religions and scientific theories of creation and cosmology belong only to this broad first category, because they all accept the world exists prior to and independent of our seeing it. For the sake of keener and more mature minds, the Vedas teach the theory of simultaneous creation, Yugapat Srishti, which is also known as Drishti Srishti Vada, according to which the seeing of the world and the creation of it occur simultaneously. In order to explain how this simultaneous creation takes place, the Vedas say that just like the appearance of a snake in a rope, like the appearance of water in a mirage, or like the appearance of the blue color in the sky, the appearance of this world of names and forms is due only to the defective outlook or dosha drishti of the one who sees it. Thus, the theory of simultaneous creation, or drishti srishti vada, is also called the theory of false appearance, vivarta vada, because it teaches that the creation of this world is nothing but a false appearance which seemingly occurs only on account of our defective outlook. Further, when explaining to still more mature minds how simultaneous creation takes place, the Vedas say that the appearance of this world arises only because we have forgotten self on account of non-inquiry, avivichara, or inattentiveness, pramada. Thus, while teaching the theory of simultaneous creation, the Vedas accept the existence of the world at least as a false appearance. But for the most advanced and mature aspirants who possess perfect courage and clarity of intellect, the Vedas teach only the final truth known as no creation, ajata, the import of which is as follows. no such thing as the world has ever come into existence. What you see is not the world. It is only you, the real self. Other than you, nothing has ever existed. There never was any such thing as creation, sustenance, or destruction. You alone exist. That is, while teaching the truth of Ajata, the Vedas do not at all accept the existence of the world even as a false appearance. The reason why they finally have to deny the existence of the world so entirely is that the world could exist as a false appearance only if there were a mind to see it. And in actual truth there is no such thing as mind at all. When one scrutinizes the form of the mind without forgetfulness, it will be found there is no such thing as mind. Upadesa Undiyar, verse 17. When the mind is thus found to be ever non-existent, the world appearance soon by it will also be found to be non-existent. Hence, Ajata alone is the absolute truth. Paramartika Satya. Although the Lord, Guru Ramana, expressed many doctrines according to the beliefs and maturity of each of those people who came and asked him questions, know that what we heard him declare to be his own real experience is the doctrine of no creation. Ajata Siddhanta. Guru Vachaka Kovai, verse 100. However, although the absolute truth experienced by him was only Ajata, when Sri Bhagavan was asked to give teachings for the sake of devotees, he accepted as if true the theory of simultaneous creation, the doctrine of false appearance, and gave his teachings accordingly. The reason why he did not give his teachings according to the standpoint of Ajata is that in the state of Ajata there exists only self, the mere existence, consciousness I am, and no other thing, no world, no mind, no bondage, no disciple, and no guru. And hence in that state no teaching is either necessary or possible. A need arises for a teaching only because we see the world, because we experience otherness, and therefore a teaching will be of practical value only if it accepts the existence of the world, at least as a false appearance. That is why Sri Bhagavan begins the first verse of Uladu Narpadu with the words, Nam Ulaham Kandalal, which means because we see the world. Since he carefully said Nam Ulaham, we should understand that Guru Ramana, who teaches what is most helpful for the souls, has set aside other doctrines and has taught as true only the beneficial doctrine of false appearance. Vivarta Siddhanta, that is the theory of simultaneous creation, or Drishti Srishti Vada. Guru Vachaka Kovai, verse 83. In the process of simultaneous creation, how does this world appear to come into existence? Whenever Sri Bhagavan was asked this question, he used to explain the process of creation by giving the example of a cinema projector, and on one occasion he said, when Adi Shankara wanted to explain this process of simultaneous creation, he gave the example of a city which is seen reflected in a mirror. Visvam Darpana Drisyamana Nagari, the opening words of Dakshinamurti Stotram. In his time, no better example than that was available. But if he were living nowadays, he would certainly have given the very apt example of a cinema projector. Let us therefore see how Sri Bhagavan used to explain the creation of the world with the example of a cinema projector. In a cinema projector there is a bright arc lamp, in front of which passes a film, and in front of that there is a lens. The rays of the light which comes from the arc lamp pass through the film, are enlarged by the lens, and create a large picture on the distant screen. The arc lamp and the projector is similar to self, which shines within our body. The film which is close to the arc lamp is similar to the very subtle tendencies or vasanas accumulated within us. The lenses by which these tendencies are enlarged and made gross are the five sense organs. When the tendencies which are thoughts in their very subtle seed form are projected out through the five senses by the light of the self, they are made gross and are seen as the picture of this outside world consisting of so many different names and forms which are merely the five sense knowledges. That is, the multitude of very subtle tendencies which exist within us is seen by us as the vast universe outside. Therefore, everything which is seen outside is in truth only what is already existing inside. Know clearly that everything which is perceived having come out through the mind and the five senses was already existing as tendencies, vasanas, in the heart, like a hidden treasure, and therefore merely an old story which has come out to be seen. Guru Vachaka Kovai, verse 84. If there were no arc lamp in the cinema projector, the picture show could not appear on the screen. Similarly, if the light of self were not present, the creation, sustenance of this world could not take place. The light of self is that which is commonly known by the name God, and without its presence the acts of creation and sustenance could not take place. For the sake of people who lack sufficient maturity of understanding, this truth is expressed metaphorically in the theory of gradual creation by saying that it is God who creates and sustains this world. When the film reel of the tendencies is made to rotate by the power of prarabdha, that portion of the fruits of one's past actions, or karmas, which have been ordained by God, the individual sees a world corresponding to those tendencies, and having identified a body as I, experiences a seeming life for himself in that world. If the film reel were not in the projector, the picture show consisting of names and forms would not appear on the screen. Instead, only a bright light would be seen there. Similarly, what shines in the outlook of the jnani, in whom all the world tendencies have been destroyed, is not this world picture consisting of names and forms. What the jnani experiences only himself, the unlimited light of self-consciousness. That is why Sri Adi Shankara says in verse 116 of Aparokshanubhuti, making one's outlook of the nature knowledge, one should see the world as Brahman. The same truth is also expressed by Sri Bhagavan in verse 52 and 54 of Guru Vachaka Kovai. Having transformed one's outlook as of the nature of knowledge, jnanamaya, if one sees through that outlook, which is of the nature of real knowledge, the world, consisting of the five elements beginning with space, will be seen as real, being found to be nothing but the supreme reality, which is the nature of knowledge. Since that sight which is seen cannot be otherwise than the eye which sees, know for certain that to the knower of reality, jnani, who due to the cessation of all mental activities, sees with the outlook which has become existence, consciousness, bliss, Satchitananda, this world is that, existence, consciousness, bliss alone. When we, the real self, who shine devoid of limitations of time and space, seemingly confine ourselves within all kinds of limitations by imagining ourselves to be an individual soul whose form is the imperfect and limited feeling I am, only this small body, the remaining portion of our unlimited existence consciousness, which is not confined within the limitation of the body, appears to our individual consciousness as this immeasurable universe, which is felt to be other than us, and as God, the all-powerful Lord of this universe. If oneself is a form the body, the world, and God will be likewise, that is, they will also be forms. If oneself is not a form, who can see their forms, and how? Can the sight, that which is seen, be otherwise than the eye, the seer? Uladunarpadu, verse 4. On account of the ego, the feeling I am the body, experiencing all the worlds which are not other than consciousness, as if they were different from oneself, who is that consciousness, is a creation of the dense and expansive delusion of ajnana, or ignorance of one's true nature. Guru Vachaka Kovai, verse 67. If we, the unlimited and undivided self-consciousness, who are unbound by name and form or time and space, and who are untainted by any changes such as birth and death, feel ourselves to be a person who is born, who has the name and form of a human body, who exists only within the limitation of a particular time and particular place, and who will one day die and disappear, then the unlimited remaining portion of our own real self will appear in front of us as this boundless universe, which contains innumerable planets and stars, all of which are bound by names and forms and by time and space, the limits of which cannot be discovered in spite of any amount of scientific research. Therefore, this whole universe is in truth nothing other than us. Similar is the case with God, the all-powerful Supreme Lord who creates and sustains this vast universe. Since he is also nothing but the unconfined remaining portion of our own real self, which shines devoid of any limitations, even though his names, forms, and other characteristics have been described in so many different ways up till now by so many religions, rishis, prophets, and scriptures, still he shines, transcending and unbound by all such descriptions. There is no end to my divine glories, O Arjuna. I stand supporting this entire universe with one portion of myself. Bhagavad Gita. The cause of the creation of both the world and God is only our error of wrongly imagining ourselves to be confined within the limits of the body. And this error arises only because of our slackness and self-attention. That is, only because of our pramada, or forgetfulness of self. What then is the truth of the statement made in the scriptures that the three functions of creation, sustenance, and destruction are the divine play or lila of God? The true significance of this statement is that these three functions are only our own divine play of using our unlimited perfect freedom, Paripurna Brahma Swatantra, to create and to sustain the wrong outlook by self-abidance, that is, by self-attention or Atma Drishti. In absolute truth, this entire divine play is nothing other than us, the real self. Though we are truly never confined in any way, we seemingly imagine ourselves to be confined within the limits of a body, and as soon as we imagine, so the world and God come into existence. Having limited and transformed oneself into a body, and having transformed the knowledge gathered through the five senses of that body into the world, one sees that the world, which is nothing other than one's own real self, as objects which are other than oneself, and one is thereby deluded with likes and dislikes for those objects. Such confusion alone is what is called the world illusion, Jagat Maya, Sadhanai Saram, verse 44. Since the three entities, we as an individual soul, the world, and God, all come into existence simultaneously, this process is called simultaneous creation, Yugapat Srishti. But since even the rising of the wrong outlook of seeing ourselves confined as a body is clearly known to be unreal, when viewed through the outlook of the all-transcending absolute reality, what will finally be experienced is only Ajata, the truth that creation, sustenance, and destruction have no reality whatsoever. When one always abides unswervingly in one's own state without knowing any differences such as oneself and others, who is there other than oneself? Uladu narpadu anubandham, verse 38. There is no becoming, no destruction, no one in bondage, no one having desire to be released, no one making effort to attain liberation, and no one who has attained liberation. Know that this is the absolute truth, Paramartha. Upadesha Tanipakal, verse 24. If we turn our power of attention towards our own self, our limited sense of individuality will cease to exist, and hence the appearances of the world and God will come to an end. We can understand this truth even from our experience in the ordinary state of sleep. When we are asleep, we do not have even the least knowledge or doubt about either the world or God. Why? Because in sleep, we, the ego, the limited first person, feeling I am this body, do not exist, and hence the other two entities, the world and God, do not exist. Thus, merely by our creating ourselves as a limited individual soul on account of our pramada, or forgetfulness of self, we simultaneously become the one who has created the other two entities, the world and God. As soon as we rise as an individual soul, the dyads or dvandvas, the pairs of opposites such as good and bad, pleasure and pain, and birth and death, and the triads or triputis, the three factors of objective knowledge, such as the seer, the act of seeing, and the object seen, all seemingly come into existence. How? When by our unlimited perfect freedom, Paripurna Brahmaswatantra, we, the one existence consciousness bliss, see our nature to be as a nature to rise. Our three aspects of existence, consciousness, and bliss are reflected and are seen by us. The individual soul as their opposites, namely non-existence, ignorance, and misery. That is, just as when a person who is standing on the opposite bank of a pond is seen reflected in the water, the right side of his body is seen as its left side, and the upper part of his body is seen below. So, when our nature is to be is seen as a nature to rise, a single aspect of existence, Sat, is seen as the dyad existence and non-existence. Our single aspect of consciousness, Chit, is seen as the dyad knowledge and ignorance, and our single aspect of bliss, Ananda, is seen as the dyad pleasure and pain. And just as when one single ray of white light from the sun passes through a prism, it is diffracted and seen as various colors, so when we imagine ourselves to be a petty individual soul, on account of our slackness and self-attention, our own single and undivided self is seemingly diffracted and experienced by us, the individual soul, as the triad consisting of the knowing mind, its act of knowing, and the many objects of the world which are known by it. Since the dyads and triads appear only when we rise as an ego, a limited and confined individual soul, they all exist only depending upon the ego as their support or base. Moreover, each component of a dyad or triad has an existence only because of each other component of that same dyad or triad. For example, if there did not previously exist an ignorance about a certain thing, what is called a knowledge about that thing could not come into existence. that is, the knowledge of a thing arises and has an existence only because of the prior existence of the ignorance of that thing. Without ignorance about an object, knowledge about that object does not exist. Similarly, without that knowledge, that ignorance does not exist. Uladu Narpadu, verse 10. In the same manner, each component of the other dyads, such as good and bad, inside and outside, and pleasure and pain, and each component of the triads, such as the seer, the act of seeing, and the object seen, has a seeming existence only because of each other component of that dyad or triad. The consciousness which knows objects is not our real consciousness. It is only the mind, or ego. Since all the various dyads and triads can exist only in this object-knowing consciousness, they belong only to the ego, the petty individual soul which we become when we confine our unlimited real nature within the limitations of a body. When we, the ego, come into existence along with us, and because of us, the dyads and triads also seemingly come into existence. Thus, these dyads and triads exist only by clinging to the ego, and hence it is only the ego that they pertain. They do not pertain to self, nor do they cling to self. Since self shines clearly even in sleep, if the dyads and triads were to pertain to self, why are they not experienced by anyone in sleep? The reason why the dyads and triads do not exist in sleep is that the ego has completely subsided at that time. Thus, the fact that the dyads and triads do not exist when the ego does not exist is a truth which is experienced by everyone. Therefore, if we discriminate in this way, we can clearly understand the truth that the ego alone is the base or support of the dyads and triads. In order that we should have no doubt about this truth, Sri Bhagavan has emphatically declared in verse 26 of Uladu Narpadu, if the ego comes into existence, everything, the world, God, bondage and liberation, pleasure and pain and so on, will come into existence. If the ego does not exist, everything will not exist. Hence, the ego itself is everything. And in verse 7 of Sri Arunachala Ashtakam, if the thought, I, does not exist, no other thing will exist.